The house was quiet that evening. Jamal sat at the small wooden table in the kitchen, staring at the red letter on his report card. The paper looked simple, but to him it felt heavy, like it carried all his dreams inside it. His mother moved around the kitchen slowly, trying not to show her worry. She trusted her son. She knew how hard he worked. But Jamal could not stop thinking about the words Mr. Carter had said. Maybe school is not for everyone. Those words repeated in his mind again and again. For the first time in his life, Jamal felt unsure about himself. He had always believed that effort leads to success, but now he wondered if effort was enough. The next morning at school felt different. Some students whispered when he walked into class. One boy said quietly, "I heard he cheated before and finally got caught." Jamal heard it. His chest tightened. He had never cheated in his life, but rumors travel faster than truth. When he sat down at his desk, no one spoke to him. His friends avoided eye contact. It was easier for them to believe the grade than to question the teacher. Jamal opened his notebook and tried to focus, but his mind felt cloudy. Every small mistake he made now felt bigger. Every wrong answer felt like proof that maybe he truly was not good enough. That afternoon, he gathered courage and went to the teacher's office. He stood outside Mr. Carter's door for a few seconds before knocking. "Come in," the teacher said. Jamal walked in respectfully. "Sir, I just want to understand where I went wrong," he said calmly. Mr. Carter looked at him over his glasses. "The grade is final," he replied. "But can I see my exam paper?" Jamal asked. "There is no need," the teacher answered shortly. Jamal felt something break inside him at that moment. It was not just about the grade anymore. It was about being denied a fair chance. He walked out of the office slowly. As he stepped into the hallway, he made a quiet decision. If he could not change this grade, he would change his future. That evening, instead of crying, Jamal opened his books again. His mother watched him from the doorway. "You do not have to prove yourself to anyone," she said softly. "I am not proving it to him," Jamal replied. "I am proving it to myself." From that day forward, something inside him shifted. The pain did not disappear, but it turned into fuel. In the following months, Jamal noticed patterns he had ignored before. He realized that he was not the only student treated unfairly. Another student from a poor family also received harsh criticism. A girl who spoke with an accent was often ignored in class discussions. Jamal began to see that bias does not always shout loudly. Sometimes it hides in small actions, in tone of voice, in lowered expectations, in quick judgments. Instead of feeling powerless, Jamal became more aware. He started writing down his goals in a small notebook. At the top of the first page, he wrote, "No one decides my limits." He began staying after school to study in the library. The librarian noticed his dedication and offered him extra books. One day she said, "You remind me of someone who refuses to give up." Those words meant more to him than she knew. Slowly, Jamal rebuilt his confidence. He joined debate club to improve his speaking skills. At first, his voice shook when he stood in front of others, but he kept practicing. Each time he spoke, he felt stronger. Each time someone applauded, even softly, he felt seen. At home, money was still tight. His mother sometimes worked double shifts. Jamal began helping neighbors with small jobs to earn extra money. He balanced work and study carefully. There were nights when he felt exhausted, but quitting was not an option. Every challenge reminded him of that red letter, not as a mark of failure, but as a reminder of why he had to succeed. By the end of the year, Jamal was no longer the quiet boy who doubted himself. He had become focused, aware, and determined. He understood something important. Sometimes unfair treatment can either break a person or build them. The difference depends on the choice they make after the pain. Jamal chose growth. He chose strength. He chose to rise. He did not know what the future held. He did not know that 20 years later, he would stand in a position of power and confidence. But he knew one thing clearly: The grade that tried to stop him had only started something much bigger. The classroom was very quiet that morning. It was the last day of school, and every student was waiting for their final grades. Some students were smiling and whispering to each other, while others looked nervous and kept checking the clock. Jamal sat in the third row near the window, holding his pencil tightly in his hand. He had worked hard all year. Every night he studied for hours, even when he was tired. He missed parties, games, and time with friends because he wanted good results. He believed that education was his way to build a better life for himself and his mother. His mother worked long hours at a small restaurant, and she always told him, "Study hard, so you don't have to struggle like me." Jamal remembered her words every time he felt tired. At the front of the room stood Mr. Carter, their teacher. He was known for being strict, but Jamal always felt that Mr. Carter treated him differently. When other students answered questions, the teacher smiled. When Jamal answered correctly, the teacher only nodded without emotion. If Jamal made even a small mistake, Mr. Carter would point it out in front of everyone. Sometimes the class would laugh quietly, and Jamal would feel embarrassed. Still, he never complained. He told himself that hard work would speak louder than anything else. One by one, Mr. Carter began calling students to collect their final results. "Emily," he said. She walked up and returned smiling. "Daniel." Another smile. The room slowly filled with happy whispers and relief. Jamal felt his heart beat faster as his name had not been called yet. Finally, Mr. Carter looked down at the paper in his hand and said, "Jamal." The room became silent for a second. Jamal stood up and walked to the front of the classroom, trying to stay calm. He believed he had done well on every test. He remembered double-checking his final exam answers 3 times before submitting it. He stood in front of Mr. Carter and waited. The teacher looked at him with cold eyes and handed him the paper. "You failed," Mr. Carter said quietly. For a moment, Jamal thought he heard wrong. His ears felt hot. His hands started to shake. "Failed?" he asked softly. Mr. Carter did not change his expression. "Yes, you did not meet the standard," he replied. Jamal looked down at the paper. There it was, a big red F at the top of the page. His mind felt empty. This could not be real. He had studied every chapter. He had completed every assignment. He had even helped other students prepare for the final test. "How is this possible?" Jamal asked politely. Mr. Carter sighed. "Maybe school is not for everyone," he said. Those words felt heavier than the grade itself. Some students looked at Jamal with surprise. Others quickly looked away. No one spoke. Jamal felt small standing there in front of everyone. He wanted to explain himself. He wanted to ask to review the exam. But the teacher had already called the next name. The moment was over. Jamal slowly walked back to his seat. He could feel eyes on him. He stared at the red letter again and again, hoping it would change. But it did not. When the final bell rang, students rushed out of the classroom celebrating. Jamal stayed seated for a few seconds. He felt like the world around him was moving, but he was frozen. Finally, he stood up and walked outside alone. The bright sun outside felt too strong for his heavy heart. On the way home, he replayed everything in his mind. Did he make mistakes? Did he misunderstand something? Or was there another reason? Deep inside, he remembered all the times Mr. Carter treated him unfairly. The extra criticism, the cold tone, the lack of encouragement. Jamal began to wonder if this failure was truly about his work. When he reached home, he saw his mother cooking in the kitchen. She smiled warmly at him. "How did it go?" she asked. Jamal could not answer right away. He slowly handed her the report card. Her smile faded when she saw the grade. She looked confused. "I know how hard you worked," she said softly. Jamal tried to stay strong, but tears filled his eyes. "I did everything right," he whispered. His mother hugged him tightly. "This one paper does not decide who you are," she said. But that night, Jamal lay awake in his bed staring at the ceiling. The red letter F stayed in his mind like a shadow. He felt hurt. He felt angry. But more than anything, he felt determined. He did not know it yet, but this painful moment would become the fire that pushed him forward for the next 20 years. And one day, he would stand face to face with the same teacher again. But next time, everything would be different. The years after that painful failure did not pass quietly. They tested Jamal in ways he never expected. High school felt like a battlefield where he had to prove himself every single day. On the first day of his new school year, he walked into the building with his head held high. But inside he still carried the memory of that red letter. Some teachers welcomed him warmly. Others looked at him with doubt before he even spoke. Jamal could now recognize the look. It was the same look Mr. Carter once gave him. Low expectations hidden behind polite words. But this time Jamal was ready. Instead of shrinking, he observed carefully. Instead of reacting with anger, he responded with excellence. In math class, he finished his work early and asked for harder problems. In history class, he stayed after school to discuss topics in more detail. Some teachers began to notice his effort and praised him openly. Each small moment of encouragement helped rebuild something inside him. But life outside school was still not easy. His mother's health began to weaken because of long work hours. Money was tight. Some nights the refrigerator was almost empty. Jamal took a part-time job at a grocery store. He stacked shelves in the evenings and studied during breaks. His body felt tired, but his mind refused to give up. One night after closing the store, the manager said, "You work like someone who has something to prove." Jamal smiled quietly. He did not explain his story, but deep inside he knew that every box he carried and every page he studied was part of building a stronger future. At school, something unexpected happened. A new student named Marcus joined the class. Marcus struggled with his grades and confidence. Other students laughed at him when he answered incorrectly. Jamal saw a reflection of his past self in Marcus. Instead of staying silent, Jamal offered to help him study after school. They began meeting in the library 3 times a week. Jamal explained lessons patiently. Slowly, Marcus improved. One day Marcus said, "You explain better than some teachers." Those words stayed with Jamal long after. For the first time, he realized that his pain had given him empathy. His experience with unfair treatment made him kinder and stronger. During his final year of high school, Jamal decided to join a public speaking competition. The topic was about justice and equality in education. When he first stood on the stage, his hands trembled slightly. But as he began speaking, something powerful happened. His voice grew steady. He shared his belief that every student deserves a fair chance. He spoke about how one unfair moment can change a life. The audience listened in complete silence. When he finished, the applause was louder than he expected. He did not win first place, but he won something greater: confidence. After graduation, Jamal received acceptance letters from several colleges. The day he opened the final envelope and saw a scholarship offer, he felt tears in his eyes. His mother hugged him tightly. "This is only the beginning," she said. College brought new challenges. The environment was competitive. Students came from wealthy families and expensive schools. At first, Jamal felt out of place. He wondered if he truly belonged there. But then he remembered the journey he had already survived. Late nights studying under dim kitchen lights, working long shifts at the store, helping Marcus succeed, speaking on stage about justice. He reminded himself that he had earned his place. In college, Jamal chose to study law. He wanted to understand the systems that allow unfair treatment to happen. He wanted to learn how to fight it properly. He studied harder than ever before. Professors began recognizing his talent for argument and critical thinking. One professor told him, "You think deeply about fairness." Jamal smiled. He knew why. His past had trained him to see injustice clearly. During his second year of college, he interned at a small legal office. He helped review cases involving discrimination and unfair grading in schools. Reading those files felt personal. Each story reminded him of that classroom years ago, but instead of feeling anger, he felt purpose. He understood now that pain can shape a person into something stronger. By the time Jamal graduated from college, he was no longer the boy who doubted himself after one unfair grade. He had become disciplined, aware, and determined. The fire that started in that quiet classroom had grown into a steady flame guiding his path. He did not know when he would see Mr. Carter again, but he no longer feared that meeting, because now he was not chasing approval. He was building impact, and his journey was only beginning. After years of study, long nights, and quiet sacrifices, Jamal finally stood at the edge of a new chapter in his life. Law school had tested him in ways he never imagined. The pressure was intense. The competition was strong. But Jamal had already survived harder battles long before he entered those classrooms. On the day he received his law degree, he looked out at the crowd and saw his mother sitting in the front row. Her hands were folded tightly, her eyes shining with pride. In that moment, Jamal remembered the small kitchen table where he once stared at a red letter on a report card. Life had come full circle, but this was only the beginning. Jamal joined a legal firm that focused on civil rights cases. Most young lawyers avoided these cases because they were difficult and emotional, but Jamal chose them on purpose. He wanted to stand beside people who felt unheard. He wanted to defend students who were treated unfairly. His first case involved a teenage girl who claimed her teacher failed her without reviewing her project properly. When Jamal read her file, he felt a familiar pain in his chest. He remembered standing in front of Mr. Carter asking to see his exam paper and being refused. This time, things would be different. Jamal prepared carefully. He reviewed every document. He spoke to witnesses. He studied school policies line by line. In court, he spoke calmly but firmly. He did not attack anyone personally. He simply presented the facts clearly. The judge listened carefully. In the end, the school agreed to reevaluate the students' work fairly. When the young girl thanked Jamal outside the courtroom, he felt something powerful inside him. It was not pride, it was peace. He realized that the pain he once carried had now become a tool to protect others. As the years passed, Jamal built a strong reputation. People respected his honesty and dedication. He never forgot where he came from. He never allowed success to change his humility. He visited local schools to give motivational talks to students from underprivileged backgrounds. He told them simple truths. Your situation does not define your future. One unfair moment does not decide your worth. Students listened closely because his words felt real. He was not speaking from theory. He was speaking from experience. One evening after a school event, a young boy approached him quietly. "Sir," the boy said, "my teacher says I am not smart enough for advanced classes." Jamal looked at him gently and replied, "Sometimes people see limits where there are none." He encouraged the boy to keep working hard and to believe in himself. That conversation reminded Jamal once again of his own past. Meanwhile, his mother's health improved slightly. She no longer had to work double shifts. Jamal made sure she had everything she needed. One night while they sat together on the porch, she said softly, "I always knew you would rise above it." Jamal smiled. He knew her belief had carried him through many dark days. Despite his growing success, one memory still remained unfinished in his heart. Mr. Carter, not with anger, not with hatred, but with curiosity. He often wondered if the teacher ever thought about that final grade, if he ever questioned his decision, or if he had forgotten it completely. Jamal did not wish for revenge. He only wished for closure. Fate has a strange way of bringing unfinished stories back to the surface. One afternoon, Jamal received an invitation to speak at a large educational conference in his old city. The event would gather teachers, principals, and education leaders. He accepted without hesitation. As the date approached, he felt a quiet sense of anticipation. He did not know why, but something about returning to that city felt meaningful. The day of the conference arrived. Jamal adjusted his tie and looked at himself in the mirror before leaving. He no longer saw the unsure boy who once doubted himself. He saw a confident man shaped by struggle and guided by purpose. When he entered the large hall filled with educators, he felt calm. He stepped onto the stage and began speaking about fairness in education. He spoke about the power teachers hold in shaping young minds. He reminded them that one decision can change a student's entire life. The audience listened carefully. Some nodded in agreement. Some looked thoughtful. As Jamal continued, his eyes scanned the room. Then suddenly his gaze stopped. In the third row, sitting quietly with gray hair and a serious expression, was a face he had not seen in 20 years. Mr. Carter, older, slower, watching him closely. For a brief second, time felt frozen. The student who once stood silently holding a failed report card was now standing confidently on a stage. And the teacher who once judged him was sitting in the audience. Listening, Jamal did not pause. He continued speaking with strength and, when the conference ended, the audience slowly began to stand and talk among themselves. Some people walked toward Jamal to shake his hand and thank him for his speech. Others discussed his words quietly with thoughtful expressions. But Jamal's eyes searched for only one person. Mr. Carter was still sitting in the third row. He had not moved. He looked older now, his hair mostly gray, his posture slightly bent. For a moment, Jamal wondered if he should walk away and leave the past behind. 20 years had passed. He had built a strong life, a respected career, and a clear purpose. Did he really need to reopen an old wound? Before Jamal could decide, he saw Mr. Carter slowly stand up. Their eyes met again across the room. There was no anger in Jamal's face, only calm strength. Mr. Carter began walking toward him carefully, as if each step carried weight. People around them slowly moved aside without knowing the history between the two men. When they finally stood face to face, silence filled the small space between them. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Felt strange. The same two people who once stood in a classroom under very different circumstances were now standing as equals. Jamal, Mr. Carter said softly. His voice was no longer sharp or cold, carried something else, something closer to regret. Yes, sir, Jamal replied politely. Old habits never fully disappear. Mr. Carter looked down briefly before speaking again. I listened carefully to your speech, he said. You spoke about fairness and responsibility. He paused. There is something I have wanted to say for a long time. Jamal remained silent, giving him space to continue. I was wrong, Mr. Carter finally said. The words hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. I judged you unfairly, he admitted. I allowed my personal bias to affect my decision. Jamal felt his heartbeat slow. He had imagined this moment many times in the past, but hearing the confession in real life felt different. Mr. Carter continued, At that time, I believed certain things without questioning myself. I told myself I was being strict, but in truth, I was being unfair. I failed you, not because you deserved it, but because I had already decided what I thought you were capable of. Jamal listened carefully. There was no anger rising inside him, only understanding. He had spent years studying how bias works, how small assumptions can lead to big consequences. I regret it, Mr. Carter said quietly. I have thought about that day more times than you know. Jamal looked at him closely. The man who once seemed powerful now looked human and flawed. You changed my life, Jamal said calmly. Mr. Carter's face tightened slightly. I am sorry, he replied quickly. You misunderstood me, Jamal continued gently. You tried to limit me, but you did not destroy me. Your decision hurt me, yes, but it also pushed me. It forced me to become stronger. Mr. Carter looked surprised. He had expected anger, maybe even resentment, but instead he saw confidence and peace. I do not carry hatred, Jamal said. I carried determination. The two men stood quietly again. Around them, the conference hall slowly emptied. Mr. Carter took a deep breath. After you left that year, I began to question myself, he admitted. I started attending training sessions about fairness in education. I tried to become a better teacher, but I never had the courage to reach out to you. Jamal nodded slowly. Sometimes growth comes from mistakes. Sometimes regret becomes a teacher. I am glad you are here today, Mr. Carter said. Seeing what you have become shows me that students are stronger than we realize. Jamal smiled slightly. And teachers are human, he replied. For the first time in 20 years, the weight that had quietly followed Jamal felt lighter. This meeting was not about revenge. It was about closure. Before leaving, Mr. Carter extended his hand. Jamal looked at it for a brief second, then shook it firmly. In that simple gesture, 2 decades of silence were released. As Jamal walked toward the exit, he felt calm. He did not feel victory. He did not feel pride. He felt peace. Outside the building, the evening sun painted the sky with soft orange light. Jamal paused for a moment and took a deep breath. The classroom that once felt like the end of his story had become the beginning of something greater. And now, after 20 years, the past no longer controlled him. It had shaped him, strengthened him, and finally set him free. That night, Jamal could not sleep, not because he felt anger, not because he felt sadness, but because something inside him had shifted again. Meeting Mr. Carter after 20 years had reopened memories he thought were fully healed. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, remembering the young boy who once walked home holding a failed report card. He thought about the doubt, the whispers, the embarrassment. He thought about the nights he questioned his own ability. And he asked himself something important. What if he had believed the teacher's words? What if he had accepted the idea that he was not good enough? His entire life would have taken a different path. The next morning, Jamal received a message from the conference organizer. Several schools had requested that he visit and speak to their students. His story had clearly touched many educators, but one message stood out. It was from Mr. Carter. The message was short. I would like to invite you to speak at my school. Jamal stared at the screen for a few seconds. His old school, the same building where everything began. He felt a mix of emotions. Returning there would mean facing the exact classroom where he once stood feeling small and defeated. But this time he would enter not as a student, but as a voice of change. After a long pause, he replied, I accept. A week later, Jamal walked through the familiar school gates. The building looked smaller than he remembered. The hallways felt quieter, yet the memories were vivid. Each step felt like walking through his own past. Mr. Carter met him at the entrance. There was no authority in his posture anymore, only humility. Thank you for coming, he said sincerely. Jamal nodded. This place shaped me more than you know, he replied calmly. They walked toward the assembly hall together. Students filled the seats, chatting softly. Some looked bored. Some looked curious. They had no idea that the man standing in front of them once sat exactly where they were sitting now. Jamal stepped onto the stage. He looked at the crowd of young faces and felt something powerful rise inside him. He did not begin with success. He did not begin with awards or titles. He began with failure. I once failed in this very school, he said honestly. The room became quiet. Students leaned forward. He told them about the red letter on his report card, about the doubt that followed, about the whispers in the hallway. But he also told them something more important. That failure did not define me, he said clearly. It challenged me. He spoke about responsibility, not only the responsibility of students to work hard, but the responsibility of teachers to judge fairly. He explained how small decisions from adults can shape a young person's confidence forever. The teachers in the audience listened carefully. Some looked thoughtful. Some looked uncomfortable. When Jamal finished speaking, the applause was loud and genuine. But the most powerful moment came after the speech. A student stood up from the back row. He looked nervous. My teacher says I am lazy, the boy said quietly. But I try hard. The room fell silent again. Jamal stepped closer to the edge of the stage. Sometimes people misunderstand effort, he said gently. But you must know your own truth. Keep working, even when others do not see it. The boy nodded slowly, and in that moment, Jamal saw himself from 20 years ago. After the assembly, several teachers approached Jamal. They asked questions about fairness, bias, and responsibility. One young teacher admitted, "I never realized how much one grade can impact a student." Jamal answered calmly, "Students remember more than we think." Meanwhile, Mr. Carter stood quietly near the wall, listening to every conversation. When the crowd finally thinned, he approached Jamal once more. "You did something today that I never managed to do," he said softly. "You turned pain into purpose." Jamal looked at him steadily. "We all make mistakes," he replied. "The important part is what we do after we recognize them." Mr. Carter nodded slowly. "I am retiring this year," he said. "I want to leave knowing I tried to become better." Jamal felt no resentment, only understanding. Before leaving the school, Jamal asked to see the old classroom. Mr. Carter led him there. The room looked almost the same. Rows of desks, a whiteboard at the front, sunlight coming through the window. Jamal walked to the third row and touched the desk where he once sat. He closed his eyes briefly. He did not feel pain anymore. He felt growth. That classroom was no longer a place of failure. It had become a place of transformation. As he walked out of the building, he understood something clearly. The true victory was not in proving the teacher wrong. It was in becoming someone who could prevent the same mistake from happening to others.